Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today on this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. I'm really fortunate today to have a special guest. His name is Michael Bartolomei, and he is the head of strategy and solutions at Launch Control. It's an all-in-one SMS marketing solution for real estate professionals. Michael and I have had a chance to talk before in the past, and we've got similar interests. We're both in the SaaS industry, which is software as a service, and so we've been able to jive on that before. But Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today. I know you're traveling. You're in Mexico City today. Um, that's one of the benefits of being in the SaaS business is you can essentially work from anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, you can work from anywhere. And, in certain cases of real estate investment, you can also work from anywhere, right? It just depends on how you set it up. But yeah, happy to be here. And thanks again for joining us on our podcast, Deal Nation, that Launch Control has out now. So it was great to have you on the other day. And yeah,
Yeah.
excited to talk.
Yeah, me too. It's really cool to, get to know you a little bit better, right? Because we didn't really get into who you are, but it's helpful for people to understand, the business journey of people who are successful in the industry. Sometimes people think, oh yeah, like they just become, the head of strategy and success and all of a sudden, but it doesn't happen overnight, right? So you've had a pretty diverse background. You've done everything from writing books to teaching English to people. Tell me about your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people come into REI with they learn the business of REI first, and then they transition into SaaS or they transition into coaching, mentorship. I had just the opposite actually. Like I started with a pretty heavy sales and marketing background around sales and marketing departments for a few different companies. And but I've also spent quite a bit of time, traveling and living in different places in the world. And when the ability to work remotely, and this is even pre-pandemic, but when the ability to work really, not I don't want to say corporate, but like business focused jobs from anywhere in the world became a legitimate opportunity. I seized on that as quickly as I could, and found my way to the founder of Launch Control. And yeah, he brought me on initially to really help build. This is like early days of Launch Control back in like 2019, and
Mm.
brought me on to really help build up the sales and marketing teams and really get the business stood up as a SaaS operation. But, in the meantime, in order to do that, I needed to learn as much as I could about real estate investment and the people behind it.
So do you invest yourself currently?
I'm just dipping my toes now. I've been really
Yeah.
focused on launch control, and I'm just starting to dip my toes in, and it's been really interesting because I, on one level, I know a lot about real estate investment and I'm very well connected within the industry. But actually going through the process of doing it yourself and looking to source deals and looking to go through the kind of the minutia of things, you start to see how many gaps you have, and you start to see where you need to fill things in. So it's an exciting and humbling journey.
Yeah, it really is. I got started in real estate back in 2001 and dabbled for a little bit, did some education, and then dove in, started out in the lending business, and then started doing some deals and got licensed as an agent. And then I took a really big hit in 2008, like a lot of people did. And then I got scared. I didn't do anything for like many, many years. And so it only been in the last few years that I've really gotten back into it because of Privy, right? So I was working
Yeah.
with investors every day. I knew had the business, I knew the process of finding deals, running comps, doing all of that. So I was like, you know what, you need to practice what you preach. And so I really just dove back into it. And now it's been a few years of doing it, but it's really, I think, helpful for me as a SaaS entrepreneur to to use the tool that I'm part of in my own business and then using it as a way to teach people. I think you've got that opportunity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important to see how the tools that you're selling and that you're developing work in a real world situation. right? You need to see how the day to day of it goes. And a lot of that for me comes from, yeah, a little bit on personal usage, but a lot of it comes through. We have a done for you service called Launch Leads, and through Launch Leads, what we're doing is we're taking the data people provide, and we're managing the entire text marketing process up to the point where the person says that they're willing and ready to have a phone call. In which case, we try to do as close to a live handover as possible. I'm basically saying, like, my colleague Benson is an expert in this area. Let me have him give you a call in the next 5 minutes or so, right? So that short-term little window is where we try to do the handoff to the teams, but we handle
Mm.
the marketing side of it. So we see all of the inbound responses. We have to figure out the strategy of how to respond to them via text so that we can get them up to the point of being discovery call ready. And you really learn a lot when you kind of dig in at that level and actually do the business of text marketing for real estate yourself.
So that particular service sounds like it's more of like a white glove kind of done for you product, right?
Yeah.
But you've got a range of different services that Launch Control provides.
Yeah, of course. So, Launch Control, it's a SaaS platform, right? So if you want to come in and you want to just send text messages to try to initiate conversations. Now, this would be the worst way to do it, but you could just sign up and go for it, right? But
Hmm.
the two most proactive ways, the two ways that you're going to get hands down the best possible results and the most deals out of the platform is, one, come in and work with our customer success team. They're not just onboarding. They're not just an onboarding team. They don't tell you how to push the buttons and turn the knobs. They're really well versed in REI, and they work with investors across the country at all different levels. Right. So they help set up the content. They help set up follow up tagging features so that you can track. Uh, in most cases, especially if you're starting, Launch can essentially be a CRM until you're ready to get to the point where you're integrating. But to really go through those text engagement best practices with them so that you can, one, minimize the amount of time that you have to spend in front of the screen utilizing the app, and two, to be able to get those inbound responses onto a discovery call as quickly as possible. That's the end
Hmm.
goal, obviously, right? You want to get as many people on discovery call as you can. Now, the and people do very, very well at that, right? The people that use launch control at a high level, that work with our CS team, they're getting a lot of discovery calls booked every month off of the messages that they're sending. The only way that people tend to get more is when they actually go through the white glove service and they use launch leads. Uh, by using launch leads, the benefits are, one, you don't have to do it yourself, right? Real estate investors, especially once you start doing well, you need your focus to be on profit driven activities, right? Like, you need to be on site talking to homeowners. You need to be dealing with comps. Like, most of your attention is on the dispo side, right? Because that's where you're making your money. But you can't let your pipeline dwindle, right? You need your pipeline full. So when by using the white glove version of this, it basically just takes the management of that channel out of their hands so that they're able to just process those inbound leads and focus on the profit driven activities. Now, the reason why it's more successful when we are the ones that are managing it, uh, one, we have just a good system in place for text engagement, but probably the biggest differentiator is what I mentioned earlier. We make sure that the investors get on a call with those homeowners within 5 minutes, right? It's
Mm.
the speed of play that really makes a difference, right? From getting someone to say, yes, I'm interested, I want to talk about my home, to 5 minutes later, they're on a call with a subject matter expert who can guide them through, lead them towards whatever solutions are best for the situation that they're in. That's vital. That speed of play, vital. And we're able to provide that in instances where very busy investors maybe just can't, right? Because they're on site, they're dealing with the dispo side of things. They literally don't have the time. So we're able to kind of cut out that delay for them.
Yeah, not to mention the people that are still working their 9 to 5, right? They've got to be at their normal job and they're trying to launch their real estate business. And so that makes it even more difficult for many of those people who are in that middle stage where, they've gotten some momentum. Maybe they've closed a deal or two and they decided to invest and launch. And now they really need somebody. They could go hire somebody, right? Which would be a leap, to go hire a contractor or a W-2 employee and, make sure they have payroll paid. But with this is a good solution for those people who maybe aren't ready to start bringing on people full time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the problem with bringing on someone full time is that now, especially if you're working still, even if you're just working part time, now you have to train that person and you have to manage that person, right? So you can't just hire someone cold and have them handle cold calls, handle the text marketing, handle even some of the social media stuff that you're doing. All of it, the REI is a very specific business, and you need to understand it at least to a competent level to be able to do this gig, right? So
Mhm.
so you would have to go through the whole process of training someone, and then you'd have to monitor them. Like, are they in front of the screen? Are they doing the things that you want them to do? Are they is the reason that leads are not as high as you expect because they aren't doing the work? These are all things that come with having a team, right?
Right.
Whereas if you can outsource that, then you literally don't have to worry about it, right? All of the pressure of that management and time monitoring and activity monitoring falls to the service, and you can determine success based off of the leads handed off and your own ability to then close those leads.
Yeah, I talk with, high producing operators in the business all the time, and one of their biggest problems is keeping good help. Like they have the time to train them, they have the time to get them to learn the business, and they start to get some, industry knowledge, and then they think, oh, well, I could do this on my own. So there's a high turnover rate for those positions because they want to go do it on their own and make all the money.
Of
That isn't
course, they
anything that
see
they
how
have
much
to
money is
worry
coming
about
in,
with
right?
this.
Like, yeah. But another thing that I think is like, speaking of those people that are in that like 9 to 5 position, like you said, they're working a lot, right? I a done for you service like ours can be great, but another thing that's really vital is Privy, right? Because that comes down to, if you're in a 9 to 5 situation, and you want to get a few deals, and you just buy a bunch of data, like all the data you can find for Tampa, right? Then the amount of things that you're going to have to filter through is extremely high, right? Because you're
Mhm.
taking the broadest approach. So you're going to be spending hours and hours and hours of time removing the responses or removing the contacts that just aren't going to lead to a discovery call.
Right.
And so the amount of time and effort you put in per one discovery call is very high. But if you're able to have a tool like Privy and you're able to do the research ahead of time and really understand the market, and to really filter down to the exact kind of properties that are going to fit your current buy box
Mhm.
as an investor, and then target those properties, even if you're using launch control in a much more limited sense, right? You're not using an enterprise account, you're using a core or a light account, and you're doing more limited outreach that's befitting the amount of time that you have. If you've got that preset research, the amount of time and effort needed to book a discovery call is going to shrink dramatically. So it's a really important front loading thing to do.
Yeah, it's a good point because, most investors just kind of take the shotgun approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, they think, oh, the wider the net, the more fish I'm going to catch. And that's not always the case. But like you said, what you end up doing is spending a lot more time and resources getting those discovery calls. And that's not great for everyone. And, I always tell people like the easiest way to find a deal is to find that house that needs some work, right? That's in disrepair, or it's got deferred maintenance, or something happened to it like a flood or hurricane. If you can find those homes that are down the street from a house that was fixed and flipped and sold yesterday, then you got yourself a deal. And that's why it's so crucial to target the right cities, the right neighborhoods with lead generation, right? The pulling of the lists, and then turning on launch control in these very specific areas, which increases the chances that you're going to have all the ingredients you need to be able to put that deal together.
Right. And think of it from the seller's perspective as well, right? Because if you know in a certain sense of the profile of that seller, because you've done that work up front, you're going to go into that conversation. They're going to feel immediately that you know who they are, a little bit about what situation they're in, maybe not who they are personally, but who they are situationally, right? Like where they're sitting in terms of the type of property they have, the options for that specific property, the solutions that you could provide for that type of property is important. I mean, think about it in the sense of like, I don't know, let's say you wanted to take a trip to Europe and you were very specific. Like you wanted to go to Paris and a very specific neighborhood in Paris. And then the person got on the phone with you and said, "So where are you looking to travel?" And you're like, I just said I want to go to Paris and I want to go to this specific neighborhood in Paris. Now you you look like you don't know what you were talking about. You look like you didn't really do your research. You look like that you're just taking a shot in the dark and it's obvious, right? Whereas if you go into that call and you can say, you know, Paris coming up this time of year, it's a great place. This neighborhood, I think you might be interested in. And the person's like, yeah, actually, I am interested in that, right? Like it's when you can get specific to the wants of the seller or the needs of the seller, you're going to come into that conversation 3 steps ahead from
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's just blasting out a hope and a prayer message and seeing what comes in.
Right. So let's take everyone through the process here. So let's say, for example, they were using Privy and they found a hot market that has high investor activity. You mentioned Tampa. It happens to be a pretty hot market, probably the hottest in all of Florida. And they figure out, okay, I'm gonna pull leads in Seminole Heights. Okay. Um, what would be the process for them if they were going to use launch control from like I've decided to pull leads in that market? Do you guys provide the lists? I think you said you don't provide the data,
We
right?
No, we do not. So the
Okay.
data the um, is the subscriber's responsibility, and that comes down to compliance, really. And
Right.
we can talk a bit about compliance later, but it's the person sending the message is responsible for both the content of that message and who the recipient goes to, or who the recipients are. Launch
Right.
control is a software, and our responsibility is to make sure that individuals receive unique messages. So we're not sending any kind of robo dial type of messages. It's our job to ensure that, and anybody using launch control will know this. You do have to hit send. It'll process 150 messages in under a minute, but you do have to hit send, which is you're willingly sending each individual message to each individual, right? Which is important, right? It
Hmm.
can't be a robo dial situation because that would equal non-compliance. So what when people have that list and they're ready to go out to that market, the first thing that you're going to do is to register your account with the carriers. Now, there's a single organizational group that registers you simultaneously with all of the major U.S. carriers. Now, we have a full white glove service for this. Not everybody does this, but we provide the sample messages. We will create on-demand compliance ready websites for people if they don't have one that fits the necessary markers for compliance with the carriers, and we'll process the whole registration for you. Now, this has nothing to do with launch control. This is everything to do with the vetting process of the carriers, but it usually takes around 7 to 10 days. And if they have a backlog, can take a bit longer, but it's usually going to fall in that 7 to 10 day window. And during that 7 to 10 days, we take advantage of that by going through really intensive onboarding, getting people trained on SMS marketing best practices, and most importantly, getting everybody linked up with their personal success manager. So for the entirety of your history with launch control, month in and month out, you've got a dedicated go-to person that you can talk strategy with, that you can talk resources with, that you can get networking suggestions from, that anything that you need, not just tech issues. There's a success team or support team for that. But I'm talking about actual high level SMS marketing, like thought leadership and ideas and processes. All of that can be done with your dedicated CS rep, which is in it's really an invaluable tool to have, because those that really utilize the CS reps just bring in a lot more deals. It just the data backs it up. They just bring in a lot more deals because they're just more savvy when it comes to the system and text engagement in general.
Yeah, like here at Privy, we've got a marketing department, right? So we pay for people every day to for branding and marketing and pay per click and strategy and so this is like another one of those solutions where you're saving people from having to go out and hire those people, right? Because you have it in house and they can give you like proven methods that they know work based off of the success of all the other people that use your platform, right? It's almost like a mastermind and they're giving you the stuff that works, so you don't have to make the mistakes.
Yeah, and like Privy, it is best used as a foundational tool for your business. A lot of people, anywhere in the SaaS industry, people are going to come in and they're going to have a, well, I'll give it a shot attitude, right? But the where real success comes from is when you stick to it and you make it a foundational tool in your business, right?
Mm,
So really having strong market research, it's not a one-time need, because markets change and they adapt, and you're going to need to have real-time information on those markets always. So having a tool like Privy needs to be a pinned foundational tool for your business, right? Being able to have a couple of core marketing channels that you use, text outreach, um, if you're doing PPC, if you're doing direct mail, it's going to depend on their budget that you have available, right?
mhm.
If you're in the beginning, you might just start off with free social, text engagement, and some cold calling that you do yourself, because that's going to be the lowest possible price point, right? But as you grow, you keep those foundational tools in place, because if you look at it over a 12-18 month cycle, you're going to have months where you get huge spikes in deals from text, and then sometimes where you get a little bit of an ebb and flow, right? But over the through line is that you're getting deals throughout the course of the year, right? So you don't want
Mhm.
to abandon foundational tools. You want to keep them in place, right? So
Right.
when people come in and they register with us, I like people to think of that as like, I'm registering this as a for the rest of my, as long as I have this business, I'm done. I'm in, I'm registered. I now have this open channel that I can use to build leads up.
Right. I mean, it's almost as foundational as, making sure you've got your email, right?
Yeah,
Like you
exactly.
have to have an email to do business, right? So it can be viewed like that. So they come in, they get registered with the carriers, right? 7 to 10 days. They're working with your team to put together the strategy. They're learning SMS marketing. They're getting prepared to launch a campaign. And then now the carriers are like, green light, you're ready to go.
Yep.
What happens next?
Well, the next thing you're going to do, or you're going to have a routine, right? Or you should have a routine, because you want to have consistency with this, right? So we call them batches, but you're taking a section of that data and you're sending out messages to try to get inbound responses. And a frustration for some people is that we limit the batch sizes to 150 recipients per batch that you're sending out. The reason why we did that from the beginning is we ran analysis, and in order to properly follow up, so because when you send out that 150, you're going to get responses immediately, right? Within the first 2-3 minutes, 95% of your responses are going to come in. So if you send out 150 messages and you get 25, 30 inbound responses, right? Now, some of them it is cold outreach, right? So some of them are going to be not pleasant, right? So you're going to be able to cycle
Mhm.
through those. But of the ones that you really do want to follow up with, right? You need to be able to do that, as I alluded earlier. You need to be able to do that real time. You have to think of it as, the person got a text message from you. Imagine, like, take your phone out of your pocket, hold it in your hand, and type the response. Who is this? How'd you get my number? You have a window of time where that your phone is still in your hand, right? You're
Mhm.
still waiting for that inbound response, so you can make a decision on what you want to do, if you want to carry on this conversation or not. But at some point, within a minute or two, that person is going to put their phone away. And as soon as they put their phone away, your chances of getting them to respond real time go down, 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 right? And if you wait 24 hours, 48 hours, now you're getting to the point where it just seems like it was mechanical, and that's going
Mhm.
to equal lack of trust, right?
Right.
So we limit the batch sizes in order to force good behavior, basically, right? It gets people to focus on the inbound leads and focus on advancing those leads as far as they can before they send out any more messages. Because our end goal is discovery call, right?
Right.
If we can get to the point where you're able to get it off of text, we don't expect you to do an entire wholesale deal via text. What we expect is to capture seller attention so that you can then begin the process of discovery. You can find out motivation, you can find out timeline, you can build trust, you can walk them through whatever options you as an investor have available. You can do the see, sense, feel nuance of real estate investment. Right? We want you to be able to do that. And all we're trying to do is tee up that opportunity for you. So we want you focused on all of those responses, because data costs money. Right?
Mhm.
Data isn't cheap. And we want you to be able to get as many deals out of each one of those data sets as possible. And that requires real attention to the leads that are coming in, because those people are holding their phones in their hand. They're
Yeah,
saying, let's interact, right?
that makes perfect sense. And that's where your done for you service, right? Somebody would be doing that for you, right?
Yeah.
In
Yeah,
that, in the case
exactly.
where if you were on the lower end, you would be responsible for replying back quickly, but in the done for you white glove service, somebody on your team's doing that.
Exactly. So if you think about it this way, right? Like, the part of real estate investment that people gravitate towards is talking to homeowners, finding those deals, right? They want to be able to get into the real meat of real estate investment. But a lot of the early stage stuff is it's marketing, right? It's setting up sales funnels, and it's setting up marketing channels, and it's figuring out what the response structure is to get to the point that you like, right?
Mhm.
And it's if you especially if you're busy, especially if you're trying to juggle this with another job, you're not just learning real estate investment, you're learning sales and marketing to a fairly advanced degree. Right? And it can sometimes it's not fun, let's be honest, right? So if you have to punt something, right? You're going to want to punt the sales and marketing side of it so that you can focus on really becoming the best possible real estate investor that you can. And so
Mhm.
if you can essentially punt that to us and let the company that has the most expertise in text marketing in the industry handle it for you, using scripting that works, that's proven, using systems that work and are proven, and that can just hand off the leads to you in almost real time. I mean, that's if that's a luxury that you can take on, it's very much worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe so. With the 150 text cap, is that daily?
No, 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 no. So the daily cap will depend on the subscription level that you have. Right.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
you're coming in on our light package, which is the lower end package. you're going to get, 2 to 3 of those batches a day, depending on how many numbers that you cycle through. And that'll go all the way up to enterprise where you're able to send probably, 8, 10, depends on the market, depends on the data, but you can send a much, much higher volume. But
Hmm.
it's, the thing about volume is this is what, even though it seems to be what the industry has taken as truth, but it's just not true. It's not purely a numbers game. It is it is a strategy game, right?
Hmm.
So if you are able to, like I said, use tools like Privy, use your market research to get down to very targeted lists. Like what was the name of the housing development that you gave in
Oh,
Tampa?
Seminole Heights.
Seminole Heights. Okay. So if you know, for instance, that you really want to focus on Seminole Heights, you can do something like what you and I talked about when you came on Deal Nation. Right? You find out first, use launch control first to find out who's buying in Seminole Heights and what they're buying. Then use the market data that you have through Privy to get a list. And even if it's a smaller list, like, I don't know, I'll say 1,000 names, a
Hmm.
1,000 names, right? You've got 8 batches that you can send out. If you're focusing, really, really focusing on that neighborhood and the solutions you can provide in that neighborhood, and you're diligently following up with each one of those inbound responses, you're going to close more deals than you would sending 8,000 messages out to just a general Tampa list, right?
Right.
So volume is not the best indicator of success, right? This is the question that one of the questions I hate is, how many texts does it take to get a deal? I don't know. How good are you at the follow up? How good are you
Yeah.
about the responses coming in? Right? It you if you're terrible, if you don't respond to any of the inbound responses properly, if you overlook potential deals because they weren't it wasn't low enough hanging fruit, it's going to take you thousands of messages to close a deal. But and we have one guy out of the Phoenix market, he was just using our core account, and I forget the exact number of deals he was closing every month, but he was doing over 100 deals a year. And he was doing a pretty good number of those through text. And he was on a core account, and he had like his girlfriend and his mother-in-law doing acquisitions for him. He was just very, very good at the human side of things,
Hmm.
very good at talking to the homeowners. And he was hyper focused on neighborhoods. Right? That was
Yeah.
his thing. He's like, he went right down to the neighborhood level. He showed expertise in that neighborhood, and he had done deals in that neighborhood. So he had a certain amount of market acceptance, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't need the volume because he had the systems, he had the strategy. So it's a careful balance, but strategy is more important than the total number of messages that you send.
Yeah. I agree with that too. I think it's, in a lot of business type marketing stuff, it's better to go deep than wide, right? And really spend time with those people. And like you said, the follow up, right? Because that text is going to lead to maybe a call, right? So the call is the next phase of that. And then are you going to get them on the phone? Are they going to return your voicemail? Maybe they're hitting them from another angle, like mail or other, pay per click type ads, right? Because they're pixeling them on the website. And now they're seeing ads about selling their house when they're going through the Facebook feed, like, that omni marketing kind of channels that people do. But I always tell people too, like, this is when you use a strategy like this, like most strategies that where you're not going for a property that's listed, it's sales and marketing. Like, you better be really good on the phone. You better perfect your scripts. You better make it sound like you're not reading a script and have it flow and be able to build rapport and get connections with people quickly. And then, if you can get that conversation, can you get them from, hey, who the hell is this, to, well, what will you offer on my house, right? That's a difficult proposition for most.
Yeah. And don't put yourself in a position where everything hinges on that call, right? You want to keep multiple channels open so that you can make up for potentially catching someone at a bad moment. Someone could say, yeah, I'm interested in selling my house. Give me a call. You give them a call, and right as they pick up the phone, they happen to spill their coffee, right? You lost your moment. Their focus is now on that spilled coffee, not on your conversation. And if you dive into a scripted pitch about, so tell me why you want to sell your house, what has you thinking about moving, they're not listening. It's gone,
Yeah.
right? So you need a way to get back to them. So this is like, let's say someone's using launch control. A lot of times, a lot of times people will just push to CRM, but we don't want you to necessarily do that right away. Or if you do, to at least keep that conversation open in launch, right? Because you've got the drip automation feature in place. So let's say that you get on that call with someone and it's an abandoned discovery call or whatever you want to call it. There are certain value props that you wanted to deliver on that phone call, right? Now, if you can take those little tidbits and break them into like a 4 or 5 message set that's going to deliver automatically in the background over the next, 3 weeks to 3 months, depending on the cadence that you want to choose, you're able to start to let them know, like, well, here are some of the solutions that I can provide, or here's a little insight into what houses are selling for off market in your area. Here's a testimonial with a homeowner that I worked with recently, so you can get an idea of what it's like doing business with me. And through this drip automation, that person who spilled their coffee is now getting this really valuable information from you, right? You're not coming back to them and just saying, how about a cash offer? How about a cash offer? How about a cash offer? Which is just reminding them of that spilled coffee moment. Instead,
Right.
you're providing real value that's making them think, you know what? I'm just going to call this person directly. I'm going to call them back because now I'm interested and now I'm going to take the initiative. And
Hmm.
it's that giving yourself that multiple open channel access to any one seller is really powerful when it comes to being able to get that result.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So what's an example of like a first text, right? The very first time you're reaching out to them, what's an example of a text that maybe you could, explain to us what it would sound like, that converts?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that you need to think about before you think about what the text message is going to be
Hmm.
is who's the recipient, right? So again, it's your the strongest thing you can do in the beginning is to know your data, right?
Yeah.
So if Seminole Heights, that's great, right? You want to go to Seminole Heights, you want to show in that message, you're going to want to show some amount of acknowledgement of that area, right? On top of that, how much more can you segment that data? Like, do you know what their situation is? Is it an out of state landlord? Is it free and clear? High equity? Is it someone that is in pre foreclosure? Is it do they have liens on the house? Like, what do you know based on the data that you pulled that is useful, right? So let's go with the situation of it's in Seminole Heights and it's a pre-foreclosure situation. Okay. So
Okay.
you know those two factors. So as a real estate investor in a pre-foreclosure situation, you want to be able to offer help, right? You want to be able to provide solutions. And you have to make the assumption that if someone is in pre-foreclosure in Seminole Heights, you are not the first person to get to them. It's very unlikely, maybe, but very unlikely, right? So they've probably got a few direct mail pieces. They've probably got texts from a few different people. They every time they go online, they're getting PPC ads. Like they're being targeted and they know it, right? So you have to kind of take that mindset of the seller in mind and assume that anybody that's in pre-foreclosure in Seminole Heights is going to be in that situation, right? So you want to send a message, but and launch control will help create the variety of messages. You don't need to just write 5 distinct messages. We have something called text spinners, and they create a bunch of variety within the messages. So it makes it a simplified message creation system, or we can just provide the content for you. It
Mm.
really depends on the choice. But if you want to be that specific, you're probably going to have to do at least do some editing to get it to be specific down to that pre-foreclosure in Seminole Heights, right? So
Mm.
if your message says something like, hey Benson, I've been actively purchasing properties and working with homeowners in the Seminole Heights area for quite a while now. Got several different solutions that I could go over with you if you're looking to avoid MLS and see what opportunities you have. And then something like a call to action, right? Like, are you available later this afternoon, or can I give you a call sometime this week? Question mark. Something that's going to get them to just say yes, right? Because anytime you can get a simple one-word response, yeah, sure, yes, what, who is this? Like that's enough to get them into the inbox where you can unlock the rest of the tools and launch. You can use the drip automations, use everything. The reason why we do that, so everyone knows, is that from a carrier perspective, it is now a two-way conversation.
Mm.
If they're monitoring a bunch of just outbound one-way conversations and there is no inbound response, it's going to be a red flag, right? But those conversations that come back in, there's no difference between me texting a seller and saying, do you want to sell your house? And me texting you and saying, hey, do you want to grab a coffee after work? If I get the response coming back in, they're not that shows a wanted conversation. It shows a two-way conversation. So it opens up the tools in the rest of the app, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
approach, you're establishing that the neighborhood's important, you're establishing that you have a certain level of expertise, and you're just providing help, right? That will do well, that will perform. Now, if you take that same list and you say, hey, I heard you're in pre-foreclosure, Benson. I can get you out of that mess in the next like couple of weeks, cash offer, give me a call. They've gotten that, right? And to get that as a text message, right? Like this isn't somebody that wandered into your office. This isn't somebody that you happen to be just talking to out in public and just wanted to get straight to the point. Like this is a text message from an unknown number, right? If you're that aggressive with a text message from an unknown number, you're probably going to get an aggressive response, right? So you have to be very mindful of the seller and what they're going through, so that you can have these conversations that are in some way volume-based conversations, because you're approaching 150 people in a similar situation. But because they're in a similar situation, they're probably going through a similar emotional process, a similar drive to find solutions, and in the case of pre-foreclosure, a similar known timeline. You don't want to
Mm-hmm.
announce that timeline, but you know what it is, right? So,
Right.
so there's enough similarity that you can have a commonality or a common purpose in your messaging that should resonate with everyone on that list.
Yeah. And I like how you alluded to, unlocking the other services by creating that two-way conversation. And that's connected to, getting explicit consent, right? Opening the door for them to be able to talk to you. And now we're getting into compliance again, right? But you've basically got them to be compliant without, making it sound weird. It's just part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And when they hit yes, then okay, now you've got an opt-in, right? And now you said you can open up some of the drip and the automation, but also too, it just now from a human level, they've said they want to talk to you, and it's just much easier to have a conversation with them now.
Yeah, and it's not a down to the letter of the law opt-in, but you can consider it like a light opt-in or a soft opt-in, because
It's implicit.
some yeah, it's implicit, exactly. And
Yeah.
and and it shows up in that algorithmic sense as a two-way conversation. And, one of the stats that we measure within launch, which is a success factor for us, is how many second responses did we get from the seller? Because that shows true intent, right? If you say, I'm looking to buy houses. I pay real money. Are you interested? And they go, what? What's this all about? And then you send a message and they say nothing, they ghost you. That's not a success factor, right? That was a person asking a simple question because they got a message from an unknown number. Now, if they respond again right? If you say in your message, I'm a professional investor, I work with homeowners in the area, quite a few solutions I can provide, wanted to find out a bit more about your house and how I might be able to help you. And then they're like, okay, well, I've gotten a few of these. How do I know I can trust this? Okay, fair, valid question, right? But now
Mm-hmm.
you're in a conversation. So that second seller response, where it shows a true initiation of conversation, that's something that we closely track. And one of our real success monitors is that our markers is that we want to see how many of those outbound messages are leading to that second response from seller, which is a very, very short step to discovery call.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about compliance, right? So within what was it, the last year, there's been like an upgrade in compliance standards for, TCPA and then, CTIA and CAN spam, like all these acronyms, right? And it scares a lot of people. But really, as long as you're just playing by the rules, you can still leverage this really powerful marketing process to connect with sellers.
Yeah, just don't think of it as marketing, right? So the the two main pillars are the TCPA, which is federal telecom regulations. And then the other side is the CTIA, which is just a set of enforceable best practices put together by the carriers. Like it's a joint effort by the carriers. They put together these best practices and they are enforceable. So when you register your account, what you're doing is essentially registering, or when we register your account for you, you're establishing a B2B relationship with the carriers where they're greenlighting your ability to use their system, right? So they have the CTIA is meant to regulate those B2B agreements and allow them to remove you from their channels if they feel like anything has become abusive or if anything falls too far astray of those guidelines. There are no legal ramifications to that. There are no financial ramifications to that. The worst that's going to happen is that you're going to lose your texting privileges and have to re-register or get a new EIN and start fresh, which is a time and pipeline killer, but it's not
Mhm.
it's not a legal complication. The TCPA side of things, there's the federal level regulations, which honestly haven't changed in the entire time that I've worked for launch control. Where there's been some shifts is at the state level. So it is a good idea. You can, if you're coming in fresh, to ask us and let us, we'll let you know if it's a market where you need to be doing something a bit differently. But it's a good idea also just to do the research and look into your own state and see what their regulations require. Now, the since the beginning, the way that text engagement has worked is that it it's not, if you're not selling a product or a service, you're allowed to reach out to the homeowner. So you don't want it to be seen as marketing, right? What
Mhm.
you want it to be seen as, and the way you want to approach it is that all you're doing is taking what would have been you sending out 150 individual text messages to homeowners on your phone, and you're just grouping that together and taking that one by one approach, that investor to seller approach in a sped up fashion, but not like, I hate the term text blasting, right? Because it goes against the spirit of being able to do this, which is it's what you're really doing is initiating one-on-one conversations, and launch control is simplifying your ability to do that, right? Because it what within that caveat is that you don't want it to be seen as open marketing, right? And where we've seen some of the cases at the state level that need to be monitored is when wholesaling is deemed as marketing and not as a just one-on-one transaction between seller and investor, right? So it's what you're doing when you're doing cold outreach is you're just initiating that one-on-one conversation, and again, as you alluded, you're focusing on the inbound responses, and you're focusing on nurturing those inbound responses and not overtaxing the unresponsive data. Overtaxing the unresponsive data is is something that could potentially get you red flagged. Being abusive towards any homeowner and not honoring an opt out when they ask to opt out is something that could potentially get you red flagged. But if you are being professional, you're treating every conversation as a one-on-one conversation, and you're focusing on the inbound responses, you're not going to have any issues.
Right. So so this works if you do it right, right? You just got to play by the rules. You had that example of the person from Phoenix who was closing hundreds of deals, and a good portion of that being via texting, to generate those conversations. So it's definitely still doable. It could be an important part of any wholesaler or real estate investors, deal generation, lead generation strategies. Um, and launch control seems like a really amazing platform from my perspective, because as an entrepreneur, like, it is, putting all the right people in the right seats and making sure that you're executing from, the very first thing is starting texting to like closing that deal. And I see launch as being an important part of that whole process. Um, do you guys actually provide the any sales and like the discovery call support, or is that something again that the investor is responsible for?
We intentionally don't provide discovery call support in terms of like scripting and what you should say. And because the conversations are all so nuanced, and you don't actually want to over rely on scripting because it'll come across mechanical, right?
Yeah.
It's that discovery call process is really a listening process. It's about listening and response more so than pitching, right?
Right.
So we don't want to give someone that's a script that's just pitching, and we want to end our expertise with text marketing, which is going back to the launch leads thing. That's why we draw the line at handoff, is because our expertise goes right up to the point of discovery call, at which point it becomes a real estate investment uh, a real estate investment process and a sales close process. Now,
Hmm.
that said, we're the biggest network of REI investors, coaches, strategic partners in the country, right? So our ability to connect you with at any level, like if you come in and you want to connect with other investors in your market that are doing well, go to your success rep, your dedicated success rep, and talk to them, because they work with everyone in those markets. They know who's doing very, very well with launch control, and they have a relationship with them, and we could potentially create those networking opportunities for you from within the launch community. We also work with the biggest coaches in the industry, people like Brent Daniels and Steve Trang are all close friends and also really great collaborators for us, right? So we can connect you to our affiliates and coaching partners that we work with that specialize in that side of the business. And then you were a guest recently on Deal Nation, our podcast that's going wide in the next few weeks. We also do internal webinars for subscribers on best practices, and in as much as we can, just provide educational opportunities to help people out. But we bring in experts for those. We don't try to handle that real estate side ourselves.
Yeah, that's really cool. The community part of it is such, I think, an important piece. You know, when people hear SaaS, like it's real like dry, and it's there's providing a service. But when you have that community bolted on, and there's a place where people can go to ask questions, and they feel like they're part of something, right? Even if they're a solopreneur, right? They don't have to be alone to do this business if they're part of a community like yours, where people are doing it, they're having success, and like, oh, I want to be like that person, and they know them, they can talk to them.
Yeah, and community and mentorship are so important.
Yeah,
And within launch control, to really engage with the community, to really connect with the network, you do have to speak up, right? You do
yeah,
have to raise your hand and say, these are connections that I want to make, right? It's not, it is in some ways a mastermind group, but it's not an organized mastermind group. Like you do need to raise your hand. But if you raise your hand, all kinds of doors will open up, right? Those connections that I made, that I alluded to, all wide open for everyone. You just got to raise your hand. And regardless, even just you and I have talked about this, like even if you're not using launch control, if you're not using Privy, if you're just taking another path through REI, mentorship and community are still going to be vitally important, right? It's not that need exists outside of what we provide. That need is just a need for being able to learn the business and to have people that you can go to when you've got questions and to figure out how they were doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. Well, Michael, I mean, I know there's a lot of people here that probably want to connect with you or with Launch Control. Like, what's the best way for them to learn more about your service and, potentially even use it?
I mean, just go to launchcontrol.us and schedule a time with our team. I gave a lot of shout outs to the customer success team because they're the ones that are there post sign up and would be with you month in and month out. But our sales guys are not sales guys. Like they have history in REI themselves. A couple of them worked in acquisitions. They've all been on the team for years at this point. So they understand the real estate investment game really, really well. So if you go in and you tell them where you're at in your business, what you're looking to achieve in terms of deal flow in the upcoming year, if you're using any other marketing channels, what marketing channels you're using, they'll take that as just as consultants and give you the best kind of possible advice moving forward. And then once you do get signed up and you're going through that registration process, do not sleep on the opportunity to talk to your CS rep. Really take advantage of that and get super educated so that you're starting right out of the gate, ready to bring in deals and get the highest possible deal flow you can out of the system.
Nice. Good advice. Well, Michael, thank you for taking the time to be with us today and talk about, Launch Control. And I really like the part about the strategy, right? Like just really looking at it holistically, how can you have the most success in generating leads? Because this isn't about any particular tool or service. It's about the outcome, right? And ultimately we want to close deals. And so it sounds like you guys have put together a really good process from just getting people in, getting them set up properly so they're compliant and they're safe. And then, setting up with the success team so you have a good strategy and then implementing that strategy so you can get to that discovery call and close them. So it's been really cool to learn about that. But I want to thank you for taking the time and just sharing that with our community.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be on. I really appreciate it. And like you said, with the strategy thing, it's as I alluded, it's not about volume, right? So those strategies that we discussed, even if you're not ready to get started with launch control, you've got a list of 50 names that you pulled doing driving for dollars, still use those strategies. Still
Yeah,
still go on Privy and get all of the market research that you can. Still do the infrastructure work and the strategy work because it will pay off. Like you will get
yeah,
more out of those 50 names than you would if you just went in cold.
agreed. Awesome. Thank you again. And for everybody listening, thank you so much for checking out this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. And keep an eye out for future guests like Michael, who can help you get your business together, inspire you to take action, and maybe just give you some tips and tricks so you don't make mistakes and prolong your path of success. So thanks for listening. Please like and share, and we'll see everybody next time. Thanks, Michael.
Good thing. Bye.
That's a wrap on today's Real Estate Revelations. Thank you for tuning into the REI Hacker Podcast. Remember, every property has a story, and every deal is a lesson. Until next time, keep hacking the real estate world.